Why are the wines of Saint Emilion in Bordeaux, France so magical and even lusted after? Why do people pay almost $2,000 a bottle for the very best of them? And most importantly, can you actually get good value in Saint Emilion so you can enjoy those wines yourself at a more reasonable rate? My name is John Alanis. I'm a certified sommelier, and in this video, I'm going to tell you the unusual story of Saint Emilion. We're going to taste some Saint Emilion. We're going to pair some Saint Emilion with some great cheese, and I am going to give you some reasonable recommendations so you too can enjoy the magic of this wonderful Bordeaux region. As you can see from my wine collection here, I love Saint Emilion. So let's get started. Let me tell you a personal story of Saint Emilion because it's what really got me into really good wine. Way back before I knew anything about French wine, say 2018 or so, I was starting to figure out that, you know what, some of these wines are better than others and that, hey, maybe there is something a little bit better than Camus. And so I got in my head that Bordeaux sounds magical, sophisticated, classy. So I decided to go to Total Wine and try some Bordeaux. I had no idea what I was doing, and I can tell you, unfortunately, that here in Texas, you're just not going to find a sales associate that's really into French wine. So I used what I call the bumble method. I bumbled into Total Wine. I went into the section that said Bordeaux, and I decided to pick one out that was about $50 or so. I had no idea what was left bank, right bank, any of that. And this right here, Chateau Fonplegade 2015, is a bottle that I came out with. And they say fortune favors the bold, and I don't know if I was bold. Maybe I was more bumbling than bold, but I came back home with this bottle, $50 bottle, Grand Cru and Classe A. I had no idea what that meant at the time. I opened it. I knew enough to serve it at the right temperature, 55 degrees, in the right glass, a Bordeaux glass, which we are going to taste some Saint Emilion in this in just a bit. And I took a taste of it. And I was like, oh my God. I had no idea that wine could taste like that. It was rich, it had black fruits, it had red fruits. It just floated in my mouth. It just got into my mind. I was like, okay, this is what French wine is all about. So as you can see, that sucked me into Saint Emilion, and I went through the whole process because of the Chateau Fonplegade right here to get the certified sommelier. So let's talk, what I love to talk about both when we're getting into a region, let's talk geography and let's talk climate of Saint Emilion, because when you know the geography and you know the climate, you have a good idea of what is going to be in the glass. So Saint Emilion is in Bordeaux in France, and it's what's called a right bank Bordeaux. Now left bank, right bank sounds a little bit confusing. All you got to do is look at a map of France in front of you, and there's a Gironde estuary. Everything to the left is called the left bank, everything to the right is called the right bank. Okay, duh. But what does that mean? Well, left bank wines, as you look at a map, are generally Cabernet Sauvignon heavy. Right bank wines, where Saint Emilion is, are generally going to be more Merlot heavy in the blend. So, for example, the Chateau Fonplegade, the wine that I still love to this day, is about 90% Merlot, 10% Cabernet Franc. And the reason they grow much more Merlot in Saint Emilion is because of the soil. The soil is clay, the soil is limestone, and the climate is a little bit more continental than what would be called the left bank. Continental just means you actually get real summers, real winters, instead of the weather being the same around all year long. But what that means is that with Merlot, which is a little bit more of, it's a medium skinned grape, Merlot will ripen better in that particular climate, and there's less disease pressure. It's a little bit thinner skin than Cabernet Sauvignon, so it can be a little bit lighter. And so in Saint Emilion, on the hills, the côtes is what they call it, that's where you're going to see the best of the vineyards. Now the limestone in the clay soil gives these Saint Emilions a beautiful minerality that defines them as much as the blend of Merlot, Cab Franc, and even a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon. We're going to talk about that in a bit. So that's what you're going to expect in the glass from Merlot because of the climate, because of the soil. You're going to, Saint Emilion, you're going to get mostly Merlot. You're going to get Cab Franc to give it more structure, to give it aromatic lift. Now, I'll confess something to you. I am not a huge fan of single varietal Cab Franc. You can get it in the Loire Valley. They're known for it. But to me, it's just, It's a little vegetal to me. However, I love the noses. Oh my God, the noses are amazing. You get these beautiful violet flowers on this you can just nose forever. Well, the Cab Franc blended into the Merlot in Saint Emilion gives the wines that lift. It gives it an aromatic lift. So you do get those wonderful violet flowers on there, those wonderful purple flowers, while also enjoying really good wine in the Merlot, the Cab Franc that gives it structure, but not the vegetal. The Merlot gives it the softness, the roundness, the silkiness, those wonderful, almost calming flavors that go into these wines without the vegetal of the Cab Franc. So let's have a little bit of fun with wine labels here, because Saint Emilion can be a very confusing place, but it can also be a fun place. So when we look at a wine label of Saint Emilion, a lot of times what we're going to see here, I'll show you with the Chateau Fonplegade, is you're going to see it says Grand Cru. What does Grand Cru mean? Grand Cru just means great growth. And in Saint Emilion, there are two AOCs, or now it's called AOPs, Appellation d'Origine de Contrôle, Saint Emilion AOC and Saint Emilion Grand Cru AOC. There are stricter regulations in Saint Emilion. You have to have lower yields, it has to age longer, it has to be above 11.5% alcohol by volume. But it's not necessarily a mark of quality, although the wines usually are a higher quality than the regular Saint Emilion AOC. So what we get into here is we get into the in Classe A's. So now when I first had Chateau Fonplegade, I had no idea what Grand Cru or in Classe A or any of this other stuff meant. I had to look at the label here, and what I thought was, hey, this wine is grand. This wine must be classy. Sounds like a great Bordeaux. And I'm going to look classy and grand drinking it. Well, both are true. So, but there is actually a level up from Grand Cru in Classe A. And so what the in Classe A system is it is a mark of quality. And so for them to put in Classe A or Premier Cru in Classe A, I'll talk about that in just a second, or Grand Cru in Classe A, they have to go in front of a tasting panel that evaluates factors like the last 10 years of taste. It evaluates the tourism. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Now, this classification system, it is not the classification of 1855 that the Left Bank Bordeaux is known for. This was more the classification of 1955, because that's when this system was implemented in Saint Emilion. And it's a fun system and it's an annoying system because it leads to something that we all love. Good wine fights, because they reclassify supposedly every 10 years, which they don't do every 10 years. And every time they reclassify, some chateaus get declassified, some get promoted. There are these gigantic fights, and there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of court fights. What always tends to wind up happening is the chateaus that were demoted get re-promoted, and the ones that were promoted get to keep it. So there's a lot of drama that goes into these wines. But what would a good wine be without some drama? See, one thing that I love about Saint Emilion with their classification system is I think it's a fantastic expression of what's called terroir. Because in these wines, when you taste a Saint Emilion, it tastes like a Saint Emilion. Now, there's going to be riffs on a theme, but Saint Emilion to me wines are almost what I would call cultural. That you taste them, they have a very, very unique taste from nowhere else in the world. Now, Chateau Quinalt de l'Ancos, that's going to taste different from Chateau La Dominique. But they're going to be like riffs on a theme. You can tell that they're from Saint Emilion, but each chateau has its own little subculture. So, back to the classification, because this is where it gets fun. So we have the regular Grand Cru in Classe A, which, as we can see, this is what the Chateau Fonplegade has. You can get these wines for about $50 to $70, and they are some of the best value wines that you are going to get. I can drink Chateau Fonplegade all day long because it literally just gets into your mind and takes you to another place. But can things get even better? Absolutely they can, because right now there are 12 what are called Grand Cru in Classe B's. But as you look at this, it's a Chateau Larciss Ducasse. I'll tell you about this one in just a second. It does not say in Classe B. It says, look at the top here, 1ER Cru. That stands for Premier Cru, as we would say in English, or in France, Premier Cru. Now, why do they do this when it is a Grand Cru in Classe B? Because nobody wants to put B in Classe B on their labels because that implies that you're not an A. So 1ER, Premier Cru, Premier Grand Cru in Classe A just sounds so much better. Now, are these wines just so much better? Absolutely they are. You can get some amazing wines. I'm going to put a list in the description below. There's 12 right now of the Grand Cru in Classe B, Premier Cru, and they can go from maybe 140 to up to 300. I got the Chateau Larciss Ducasse for 97. I got the Chateau, I call this Chateau Duffy because I can't pronounce it. I got this one for about 100 a couple years ago. Probably goes for more, 120 or so now. But you can get amazing values with Grand Cru Premier in Classe A. So if you're drinking a Premier in Classe A and in Classe B, that makes you Grand, it makes you Classy, and it makes you Premier. That's what you get in the glass from those wines. Now, there's actually one more level up, and this is where it gets even more dramatic and even more exciting. There's right now 2 Grand Cru in Classe A's, Chateau Figeac and Chateau Pavie. There used to be 4, there should be 5, but 3, Chateau Cheval Blanc, Chateau Ausone, named after the Roman poet, and Chateau Angelus got pissed off in the last reclassification in 2022 and decided to declassify. They threw a wine tantrum, they stomped their feet, they crossed their arms, they say, we are not participating, we're going to stand on our own. Can they stand on their own? Absolutely. They are some of the greatest wines ever made. Chateau Ausone is the wine that goes for about $2,000, $1,800 a bottle, and people buy it. They are truly amazing wines. And so some of those can get a little pricey. One of the greatest wines ever made, and it's mentioned in the movie Sideways, is the 1961 Chateau Cheval Blanc. There is universal agreement that that is the greatest wine ever made. But what's neat about Chateau Cheval Blanc, you can probably get it for $800. It's not like Domaine Romanée-Conti where they're going to whack you $25K for one bottle. They are actually accessible wines. You're not going to drink them every month. You may drink them once a year, but they are absolutely amazing. They are definitely Grand Cru in Classe A. So if you're drinking them, you're an A+ type of a guy. All right, enough of talking about wine labels and drama. Let us actually open some St Emilion and give it a try. What I'm going to do here is I've decided to go with the Chateau Quinalt Enclos 2018. And the reason that I've gone with this one is a Grand Cru in Classe A. It's not an in Classe B or Premier in Classe or an A, but it's a excellent value one, probably about $60 or so. And the reason that I'm going to go with this one is it's right in the middle of its drinking window. 3 to 15 years from 2018 is about 7 to 15 years is about the drinking window for this. And then this one's going to start to drop off. The unique thing about St Emilions when they age is that they have these notes of Dutch cocoa that comes right out. It's the dangest thing. Even non-wine people that I've tasted St Emilions with say, oh my God, that's Dutch cocoa. So you get Dutch cocoa, you get espresso, you get some of the red fruits like red cherry, red plum. But as they age, it starts to take a little bit of a backseat to the Dutch cocoa and the espresso. Me, I'm an American. I like some fruits still in my wine. So we're going to go with this one. And the unique thing about this one is it's 71% Merlot, 14% Cab Franc, and the rest 14% is Cabernet Sauvignon. That's actually not grown that often in St Emilion, but this wine is starting to get a little bit closer to Pomerol. It's in a little warmer climate, and so the grapes are going to ripen earlier, and they're going to have a little higher alcohol. They're going to be fuller bodied, and so they actually, this is one of the first chateaus in St Emilion to harvest because they don't want their grapes to get too full, to lose acidity, to be flabby. They want it to be just right. So I'm expecting a nice, rich wine right in the middle of its drinking window. So enough talking. Let's open this classy Grand Cru and give it a taste. All right, cap comes right off here. And we should get a good cork on this. It's only 7 years old. That's one thing I love about the St Emilion, the Grand Cru and Classe A. For 50 or 60 bucks, you can get one that you can drink right now. You don't have to age these things 15 or 20 years or something like that. You can get some spectacular wines at the store, and you can go home and drink them right away. That can be some frustration with some of the left bank Bordeaux, is that you have to wait a long time. With these, you don't have to wait hardly at all. They are beautiful at any age. All right, looks like we got a nice good cork here. Yep, perfecto. We'll put this over here. Now, I am going to drink this in a wide bowl Bordeaux glass. As you can see, it's got a lot of surface area here. So Merlot is not a particular aromatic grape. Cabernet Sauvignon is not a particular aromatic grape. So the 14% of the Cab Franc is going to give it a little lift. But we want enough area for this to come up, and we want enough surface area for the oxygen to interact with this. So that these wines come together. One of the wonderful things that I love about blends, especially from St Emilion, is that as oxygen gets into the wine and the wine begins to open up, you can literally feel the varietals begin to come together. If you want, the fancy term for it is called assemblage in the glass. You can feel the assemblage, the assembly, really start to come together by about glass 3 as you go through the bottle. So let's nose it. I get a lot of black fruits on here. Certainly blackberry, black plum. And that makes sense because it's a little closer to Pomerol, where you get more black fruits in the Merlot. And you get black fruits from Cabernet Sauvignon, and you get black fruits from Cab Franc as well. You can actually get a little bit of a raspberry for Cab Franc. Get a little bit of vanilla, a baking spice from the oak. But this is a very, very promising wine on the nose. This is a little lighter wine than I would have expected. I'm starting to get actually a little bit of an age on it. It's 7 years old. The Dutch baking cocoa is definitely starting to make an appearance. The espresso is starting to make an appearance. And behind it, it's right at its perfect drinking window. And behind it, we're getting a little black cherry. We're definitely getting black plum, a little bit of red plum, and maybe a tiny bit of raspberry, which would come from the Cab Franc. But this is going to be quite a good bottle. But yep, those Dutch baking cocoa notes that St Emilion is known for are really starting to show up. So, one more thing for you here. You like wine? What should we have with it? Let's have some cheese with it. What would I pair with the St Emilion? Well, I wouldn't want anything like an Irish cheddar because that's going to be too intense and overwhelm the wine. But I don't want anything delicate and nutty like a soft cheese. So I am going to match the intensity of the wine to the intensity of the cheese. When it comes to Merlot, think medium. So we're going to have some medium intensity cheese, and we are going to go with an aged Gouda. This is 2 years old. I tasted it. It's quite excellent, so it should match perfectly well with the wine. Since I've already had a sip of the wine, I'm just going to take a bite of cheese. That's some good cheese, I'll say that way. Swallow. A little cheese still in my mouth. I'm going to take a sip of the wine. That's a great pairing. They both complement each other. I get the cheese separate. I get the wine separate. There's a little bit of salt in the cheese. It brings out a little bit of the fruit in there. It's a fantastic pairing. But here's how I'm going to do this. I don't want to eat cheese that go through a whole bottle of wine. I'm going to let this open up. I'm going to eat a little cheese to about a half glass of wine. I'm going to be done with the cheese. I'm going to go through this whole bottle over a few hours, and I'm going to let the wine come to me. I'm going to see where it takes me. Because the magic of St Emilion is the blends coming together that get into regions of your mind where emotion and memory reside, and it takes hold of them, and it just takes you places. So, enough talking. Let's get to drinking. If you have recommendations of your favorites from St Emilion or your wonderful St Emilion experiences, share them with me in the comments below. I love to hear your recommendations so I can try them for myself and share them with other people. So go get yourself a bottle of a St Emilion Grand Cru in Classe A, and you can be grand, you can be classy, and you might even be premier. Enjoy!